Hello and welcome to the 2022 Halloween Day Night card. Now I'm going to do this one in real time because this is a card that came together very quickly, and I figured we can do it as a quick card type of format here. I'm not used to doing a voiceover to a real-time I don't know, whatever application of stamps for a scene. Alright, so I just stamped out the sedge filler to create a little bit of a little slope there, I guess. And then I'm stamping out the Spooky Moon large there. It doesn't look like it goes very well, but we're going to be adding a lot of tone to that little slope in there. And I'm stamping this moon fairly low on the horizon because I want it to be visible in a mirror card situation. So anything that you want to be fairly visible in a mirror card situation, you want to have it as close to the crease or fold as you can. All right, lower bottom half of a typical quarter page size of card. All right, now all of these images are being stamped in a dye-based ink, black in this case. Stamping out the tree trunk trio here, and we'll follow up with the tree trunk on the right side. You can use the same trunk on both sides of the moon if you want to. But these trees will provide a really nice framing device for our, I guess the focal point of the scene is the moon in this case, because we're not really using something else that has a stronger kind of visual draw up in that section. I want the main visual draw to be the lower portion of the scene in the form of a skeleton. I was envisioning kind of a skeleton, kind of I don't know, almost like ice skating on top of a a glassy surface. I didn't end up having them kind of skating around with a kind of a white acrylic pen type of line that I was going to have under his feet, because I had to stamp the skeleton a little bit lower than I thought I would, just so it would show up quite a bit more. Okay, so this is the dark cloud, or spooky cloud dark here. I need to use this one more often. I really like the layering look of it here, just in monochromatic. I've stamped it a lot in blue tones before, just to give it a kind of more, I don't know, mellow looking kind of reverse sky type of application. But I really like that kind of glowing, I don't know, visual by overlapping it here several different times. There's a Spooky Moon Dark and a Spooky Moon Light. The other one has less density to the clouds, and you can use them both in conjunction with one another. Okay, so I'm going in here with the black ink, and this is why this scene comes together so fast, is because we're not really working through several different layers of colors. So you can get these, I don't know, grayscale pieces. I don't necessarily see them as ominous looking. I mean, like black and white photography or black and white landscape photography isn't like some kind of inherently ominous looking thing. But depending on how you use these, whatever value scheme, color scheme, your scene will take on kind of the emotional quality, appearance accordingly. So in this case, I'm going to make the scene fairly, I don't know, film noir type of thing, by going in with some darker tones here. So I do use a pretty decent amount of this black here, but I'm applying it in a grayscale type of format by applying just a little bit of tone at a time. So I have this paper towel here. You can use a sponge or whatever other tool you like using. I think paper towels work fantastic because paper towels are very absorbent of liquid moisture, and if they can absorb that type of moisture, then they can transfer it onto whatever you want to transfer it onto. In this case, it's a piece of semi-gloss cardstock. So I'm probably applying about, I would guess, maybe a 3 to 4% gray scale application of this black ink at any given time, okay? Don't try to rush this process right here. If you do, you stand to get more kind of harsher streaks, and that could be good in some instances where you might want a little bit more texture, but if you want it to have kind of a softer application, then just take it nice and kind of methodically. And then you can also watch your whatever color scheme you happen to be working with, in this case just grayscale. You can watch it happen very gradually, and when it happens in a gradual manner, it means that you'll have a lot more control over it than, say, some very spontaneous, you know, heavy mark type of application. You know, that would be akin to something like calligraphy or something like that, where you have this really definitive line. All right, getting my bearings here and seeing how that reflection is going to look like that. And in normal kind of circumstances where I'm not doing a mirror card application, I would probably stop right there, here, where I'm at. But I really want the top portion of this scene quite a bit darker, because I'm going to have that skeleton stamped in that lower half. So I need to have a fairly dark area of this top scene reflected into that bottom part of the composition. Yeah, just simply so that it stands out. If I'm stamping a skeleton in white, I don't want to have that skeleton stamped over like a light gray area, because it just wouldn't show up enough through contrast. So, okay, now this is something that's pretty fun to do. It's almost like a black and white photography color tinting. All right, so I'm going in here with a Distress Ink walnut stain, I think it is, the color. And we're getting a warmer tinge. So even if you're going with grayscale, you can add temperature to it if you want to. I really like blue tones over a grayscale scene to give my grayscale kind of a cooler temperature. In this case, I wanted a warmer temperature. I know it kind of looks a little bit more aged and antiqued. And I don't know, I like that type of color scheme. It's like kind of like a sepia, I don't know, inspired scene. It's not a sepia looking print or something like that, but a little bit more so with that warmer tinge to it. All right, so getting my bearings again, taking a look at that. All right, now I decided, okay, I really need to give a stronger kind of shadow base to these trees. And where this waterside type of forest is going to be, I need to create a little bit more of a slope, so kind of a little bit more of a definitive base line with darker tones would serve that purpose here. What it looks like is, I mean, if you create this kind of a little bit more of a shaded base when you're doing these mirror cards, if the mirror card is going to represent water or ice, which they naturally, I don't know, kind of do because of the reflective nature of the, in this case, silver foil. You can also use gold foil or something like that. It looks better having something sloping down into the water, so you create that with a little bit of a darker base area. In this case, there's not too much of a darker slope, because this is such a small piece of paper. So one of the things I did do was I used this Reed's large stamp right here to create some waterside types of foliage. You can use something like cattails or something like that too. I think that would be good. All right, so again, just getting my bearings here, taking a look and seeing how dark that base area is, and I'm looking to see how that transition looks going from kind of surface to that water area. Working the tones even darker up top. Sometimes when the inks dry, they can look a little bit lighter, so you just add more tone according. And also, I added that distress ink in there, so that changed the background a little bit. In terms of visibility, I worked that tone into some of my lighter areas. Okay, I added it into some of the white areas, in other words. So there wasn't as much contrast up there anymore because I blotted out the contrast with color. So if I want some areas to look lighter, I mean, you can do something with the use of white pigment ink or something like that. But if you really want something to look lighter, where you've already applied some darker tones to it, one of the things you can do is you can also work contrast by going even darker in another area so that everything else seems lighter by contrast. So you can make things physically lighter, but you can also make things look lighter just by contrast. All right, now I thought I would try some colored pencils on here just to go into some of more of the detailed areas within these tree trunks. I do have some of those clouds, the texturing of the spooky clouds going right into the trees. So I didn't bother masking them off, just because I don't think you really need to do that with a light cloud like that. But I do have some of those textures going into those trees that I could see, so I just kind of used, in this case I'm using a black colored pencil here, and again I'm just using it very lightly to go into some areas and define them a little bit more. I'm using them on the tree trunks a little bit. But again, I don't really fuss about, I don't know, kind of light over stamping when it comes to my scenes. It's just, there's things that are visible if I really look at it, but I just don't bother with a lot of things like that. I focus in on kind of more the larger visuals and whatever concepts that are working in a scene. And now here I'm using some white pigment ink to give the moon a nice kind of soft glow, and then we'll also use some of that white pigment ink over some areas of the trees and the base of the trees where they're transitioning into that sedge filler, or the grassy surface, the forest floor basically. Alright, so this can really add a lot of texture to your scene as well as lighting, okay? You want to do it in a nice gradual, methodical process here, again, so you have a lot of control over it. You don't want to have a lot of white pigment ink applying to your piece in a big kind of sloppy application, because it's really hard to control that way. Unless you're going for something very, I don't know, like German expressionism or something like that, where you're going for some really thick gestural applications of media. In this case, I'm applying it very slowly, and this white is probably, I don't know, maybe a 2 or 3% application of that white, 100% being complete opacity. Okay, so if with every dab you're doing, it's just a few percentages of that, in this case opacity of the white pigment ink, then you're going to have a lot of control over it. And then you also use light tapping, and then if you want to have a stronger application, you can tap more and build up that ink, as opposed to just trying to get it in one fell swoop. Okay, so you can see that. It's just a very light application of it. It's very translucent. And you get that really nice glowing type of effect there. And look at that. It looks really great in that reflective area down there. So at this point in time, I was still thinking about, okay, I'm going to have that skeleton somewhere in the scene. And I was looking at the base of it, just, I don't know, seeing if it's going to be dark enough in that area. Alright, so we have some very soft applications of light in the form of that cotton ball applied white pigment ink. I use the Brilliance in this case, but you can use any type of white pigment ink that you want, any brand, okay? The Brilliance dries a little bit faster, or quite a bit faster, because it's a water-based, fast-drying ink. And the other types of white pigment inks, besides the StazOn, okay, I have the StazOn right there over to the left. I didn't end up using that one, but I was going to use that one on my skeleton, but I need a re-inker for it, and that pad was completely dry. Apparently someone told me that every time you use that StazOn white pigment ink, you have to re-ink it every time, and I believe them. It just really dries very quickly, even when it was brand new. And it practically is brand new. It just dries really quickly. I mean, it's a solvent-based, you know, white pigment ink, so it's going to dry very quickly. Which is designed to do, so it's also drying in the pad, you know, very quickly. All right, so I'm adding the little crisp little highlights on the inside portions of these trees. Always kind of hold your card out at arm's distance to get a feel for highlighting and seeing what those little dots are doing in relation to what you can see. So in other words, so right here I felt, okay, I added a little bit too many of those white dots. You can scratch them off with an X-Acto blade or something like that, but I just went over it with a black colored pencil again. And I made some of those really sharp white dots a little bit more gray so that they didn't stand out quite as much, okay? So again, you're just doing little bits of refinement as you go along. You can always go back to media that you've used before. If I put like way too many white dots, I can even go back with the dye-based ink applications, or you can add more of your distress ink over the top of some of these dots, and it'll color the dots instead of it being a pure white one with a lot of contrast. You can make the dots a colored dot, and that's one of the things that's nice about the acrylic paint pens and whatnot. Okay, so I added in some other tones in there, and I don't know, kind of it muted some of my reed stamps, so I'm going back in with the reeds, and I'm just stamping more of them here to get a nice crisp application of them, and it also kind of builds up a little bit more of a cluster in the, especially in the left and right corners. You can't really see them too well here in this video. But that's it for that top portion. We're almost done with the card here. This was very much a quick card application. I'm surprised at how little time it took to do this one, but when you're doing these grayscale scenes, it really does go fast because you're just basically using one color of ink, in this case black, to achieve all of those different gray scale values. And then, I don't know, I was surprised at how little time it took because this is also a mirror card too. But I guess one of the things is that when you're doing these types of cards, if you're using a lot of media on them, a lot of different colors, that's the thing that takes the most amount of time. Stamping imagery really doesn't take too much time at all. So all we have left to do here is stamp out a couple impressions of the spruce tree down here in the left and right corners. That'll frame off the bottom scene really nicely. I'm going to use a StazOn black because it dries on this silver mirrored cardstock very easily and quickly. and you will not have to spray seal it afterwards. That being said, because my StazOn white pigment ink was very dry, I used my Brilliance ink to stamp my quote stamp and skeleton stamp, which I will have to spray seal, because those do dry on the surface, but they don't adhere to the surface like a StazOn would here. Alright, so I'll have to get a white StazOn reinker. There's a few things that I need to get that I just haven't gotten around to yet. So that being said, please hit the like button, comment, subscribe. That really helps out the channel, especially for a small channel like this. With it's a niche viewership, so that really helps out, and I really appreciate it. All right, so those are the trees. Those two. Well, 3 impressions. I do a kind of a tip of the tree on that left-hand side, just so that the left and right side aren't so symmetrical. But those left and right side applications of some sort of object in these mirror card situations really helps to frame off that bottom scene, and also it looks really quite three-dimensional, I believe, in this mirror card format. All right. Taking a look at this skeleton, and it occurred to me that if I stamp that skeleton right there, it'll look like he's kind of worshipping the moon or something like that. But I really intended on stamping them a little bit higher, but this is a small card. And then if I stamped them too much higher, I would have that skeleton in kind of covering up that reflective, or the reflection of the moon, right? So if I stamp him in white, I don't want that moon behind him in white because I wouldn't be able to see the silhouette of him. So I'm stamping him again in an area that's going to be reflecting dark down there. So that's why I did the top of this top part of the card so dark. It's because I needed that darker reflection on that bottom portion there where the skeleton was going to be. Alright, so I thought that stamped out really quite nicely in the white pigment ink. And see, there he goes. There he's dancing around. And I thought he showed up very well right there. But see, wouldn't it be cool, you know, to have him kind of like ice skating on the ice? If I was going to do that, I still might do it or something. I don't know. It's past Halloween, but I would do this little trail coming off of his foot, like a little path in the ice. You know, like ice skaters leave a little bit of a trail behind them, especially on fresh ice, right? So I would have done that with this skeleton. I thought that would have been funny. So he's like having a good time, kind of going out for a nice skate. I don't know. I mean, this scene right here isn't so winterish either. So maybe I would do that on like a winter scene, and I would put some snowfall or something like that in there. I don't know. I still might do that now that I think about it. All right, so stamping this quote stamp here. I thought this quote stamp was really fantastic for this, I don't know, Halloween scenario. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. So it's kind of this Halloween type of thing, talking about spirits, but it's also, it's like nature always wears the colors of the spirit. But I mean, this skeleton right here, I mean, it's a skeleton, but it's not a spooky skeleton. I mean, this skeleton's out there dancing and having a good time. So I thought that was very appropriate there. I thought it went really well with that. I guess one of the things you can do too, you know, I could have put a clear embossing powder over the white impressions here and embossed it. A lot of times I don't like doing that too much on the foil cardstocks because you can get a little bit of warping if you by applying so much heat to a piece. But I don't know. I'll just spray seal it a little bit with a little bit of acrylic spray. Okay, so anyways, hope you enjoyed the card. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.